Welcome to the 700 Club. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will deliver a major speech to Congress today. While it's billed as a joint address, many seats on the Democrat side of the aisle will be empty.
Vice President Kamala Harris will also be skipping the speech. This reflects the deep division in the Democrat Party over support for the State of Israel. CBN's chief political analyst David Brody reports.
When Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived in the U.S. this week, no administration officials showed up to greet him. Vice President and soon-to-be presidential nominee Kamala Harris also chose a campaign event over attending Netanyahu's speech to Congress, something vice presidents typically do.
I'm not surprised that some of the more radical members of the Democratic Conference may boycott, but it's shameful when their top leadership is so willing to abandon a key ally.
This is due to a party in deep division over Israel. Even longtime supporters like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer have backed away from the current Israeli government.
The Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th.
The shift has been growing for years. In 2001, just 18% of Democrats nationwide sympathized with the Palestinians. Now, that number up to 38%. And in today's war between Israel and Hamas, more than half of Democrats, 53%, believe Israel is committing genocide against Palestinian civilians. Former New York State Assemblyman Dov Hikind says his former party is now unrecognizable.
I was a Democrat as an elected official for 36 years, but and now I'm a Republican, and it's obvious why. Because the Democratic Party has abandoned Israel.
And on Wednesday, there will be dozens of empty Democrat seats when Netanyahu speaks as a protest against Israel's war effort. Some have said they'll disrupt his address.
They don't want to show up, don't show up. The show will go on, the applause will go on. Netanyahu will present the reality of what Israel is faced with.
While the Biden administration is taking criticism for not being more supportive of Israel, the loudest voices in this intra-party division are coming from far-left members.
There are a few anti-Israel voices that have emerged in this party, just as there are in the Republican Party. We're doing our best to combat those voices, to make sure that they don't build more support from other members, but also to defeat them.
Mark Mellman's group, Democratic Majority for Israel, helped already defeat one anti-Israel member of Congress, Jamal Bowman, who lost his New York primary. Now they're targeting Congressional Squad member Cori Bush in Missouri. Mellman says that while defeating anti-Israel members of Congress is important, there's a major PR battle to be won, especially among younger liberals.
There's no question that a lot of young people particularly have been taken in by this misinformation. Those young people are going to become a majority, and those older people are going to be gone. And the reality is we have to make sure that those younger people in the population at large are as supportive of Israel as their parents and grandparents were.
If that's the goal, then the polling suggests mainstream pro-Israel Democrats have their work cut out for them. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Well, all of us who support Israel, all of us who stand with Israel have our work cut out for us. And you just have to look at the ratios. The pro-Palestinian posts on TikTok and Instagram outnumber the pro-Israel posts 54-1. Those are ratios that over time, if you have a deluge of pro-Palestinian sentiment, how do you stand against that? When you dig into it, when you go to protesters on Columbia campus or University of Pennsylvania campus and you ask them, well, when you're chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, what river are you talking about? And they can't name the Jordan River. When you say, what sea, they will say, well, maybe the Red Sea, or they won't identify it as the Mediterranean. They don't even know that they're calling for the complete elimination of Israel and the death of every single Jew living there. Realize the war we're in. It's not just a war of terror. It's not just about October 7th. Israel's existence is at stake. For the architect of October 7th, Yahya Sinwar, from a tunnel in Gaza. What he is saying currently, this isn't months ago, currently, I have Israel right where I want them. He didn't care about the people of Gaza. He didn't care that even his own family was going to be in a tunnel in Gaza. He didn't care about any of that. He has been dedicated his whole life to eliminating Israel. That's the genocide. And for 53% of Democrats to say they believe Israel's trying to commit genocide, they are severely misinformed. Let's get the good news out there. Let's talk about Israel as the only democracy in the Middle East. Let's talk about Israel as the place where all religions are thriving. It's the only country in the Middle East where the Christian population is actually growing. For Muslims, they have rights to all their holy sites. They have rights to the Temple Mount, which is unbelievably significant when you understand where that is in Jewish history. For them to say it's an apartheid state at the same time they have complete rights to vote, Muslim members of the Knesset are voting this week, and you know, how has truth been turned on its head? Let's get out there with the correct news, with the correct view, the view based and informed by history, that the Palestinians have never wanted peace, and the whole stage has been set for them to wipe Israel off the map. That has been their goal since 1948. Let's recognize that. And it was a phrase developed by Israeli politicians back in the 1960s. The Arabs never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. They have never wanted peace. After the '67 war, Israel offered all the land back. The West Bank, the Temple Mount, they offered it back. What did they want in exchange? They wanted peace. They wanted recognition. And in Khartoum, in Sudan, the Arab nations got together and they came out with the three no's. No peace, no recognition, no Israel. They don't want Israel to exist. Let's have that be the message to the world, and in that message, realize America needs to stand with Israel. In other news, President Biden is back in the White House, ready to explain why he dropped out of the 2024 campaign. John Jessup has that story and more from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. The president is recovered from his bout with COVID ahead of his speech to the nation this evening. His trip to the White House Tuesday was the first time he's been seen in public since announcing he's pulling out of the race. Tonight's 8 p.m. Eastern Oval Office address detailing his decision and plans for his remaining time in office. Meanwhile, the vice president made her first campaign appearance as candidate for president in Wisconsin yesterday. Well, new leadership at the Secret Service, the interim head, Deputy Director Ronald Rowe, is a 24-year veteran of the agency. He steps in after Director Kimberly Cheadle resigned yesterday. Cheadle faced bruising hearings on Capitol Hill and relentless criticism over the agency's failure to prevent the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. CBN senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener reports.
In an email to staff, Cheadle writes, I take full responsibility for the security lapse. In light of recent events, it is with a heavy heart that I have made the difficult decision to step down as your director. And Cheadle added she didn't want calls for her resignation to distract from the agency's work and mission. Her action follows several hours of blistering questions from House lawmakers in this hearing on Monday.
Why was he allowed to take the stage with a suspicious person having been identified in the crowd?
Cheadle herself called the incident the most significant operational failure since the attempt to assassinate President Ronald Reagan.
On July 13th, we failed. As a director of the United States Secret Service, I take full responsibility for any security lapse of our agency.
Mounting criticism of her answers and unwillingness to share information led lawmakers from both parties to insist Cheadle step down.
It is my firm belief, Director Cheadle, that you should resign.
If you have an assassination attempt on a president, a former president, or a candidate, you need to resign.
Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer issued the following statement after Cheadle resigned. The Oversight Committee's hearing resulted in Director Cheadle's resignation, and there will be more accountability to come. The Secret Service has a no-fail mission, yet it failed historically on Director Cheadle's watch. House Speaker Mike Johnson met with the director before her testimony and appointed a bipartisan task force made up of 6 Republicans and 7 Democrats to investigate the shooting. He welcomed her decision.
The immediate reaction to her resignation is that it is overdue. She should have done this at least a week ago. I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that she has heeded the call of both Republicans and Democrats.
On Truth Social, Trump had this to say about the news. The Biden-Harris administration did not properly protect me, and I was forced to take a bullet for democracy. It was my great honor to do so.
After Cheadle's announcement, President Biden thanked her for her service, saying, "We all know what happened that day can never happen again." In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Thanks, Tara. The Secret Service is now encouraging the Trump campaign to hold all its rallies indoors. Well, back to the Middle East. Israel and the United States are highly critical of a new unity agreement between rival Palestinian factions Hamas and Fatah. The agreement was fostered by the Chinese government and signed in Beijing. Fatah is part of the Palestinian Authority that rules the West Bank, while Hamas controls Gaza and launched the October 7th attack against Israel. Israel and the United States rejected the idea of Hamas as part of a ruling authority in Gaza. In a statement, Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz criticized the head of the PA, saying, quote, "Instead of rejecting terrorism, Mahmoud Abbas embraces the murderers and rapists of Hamas, revealing his true face. In reality, this won't happen because Hamas's rule will be crushed and Abbas will be watching Gaza from afar." Gordon, he concluded his statement by saying Israel's security will remain solely in Israel's hands.
I hope you understand that history just got made, and it's not a good history. It's not a good history for what what has been long called the free world. Fatah was the political opponent of Hamas in the Gaza elections back in 2006, 2007. They lost that election. And this is all during the Bush administration and the so-called Arab Spring. And we're going to see liberty and freedom and democracy come to the Middle East as a result of our invasion of Iraq. All of that is obviously a false hope. But the absolute shock that went through the Bush administration when Hamas won, because Hamas was literally created by the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And when Egypt had free elections, the Muslim Brotherhood was elected. Well, what happened after Hamas won that election? And you're not going to hear this in any other media. What they did is they took Fatah supporters on top of buildings and they threw them off the building. That's what Hamas did. That is how they view their political opponents. Can you imagine how they view you and me, or how they view Israelis? But that's what they did. And then they canceled all future elections so that no one would ever come into power. Gaza became a terrorist state. And we want to talk about Hamas as a terror group, but they've been running that place ever since that election. And they exacted revenge against their political opponents. And they didn't say, well, we had an election, we won, it's time for us to go home, and now it's time to govern. No, now it's time to absolutely have an iron grip on Gaza, and we're going to kill you. For them to now come together and say we're united, that shows the true colors of Fatah and Hamas, that what is happening is they view a turning point in the conflict with Israel, that all of the aspirations to wipe Israel off the map from the river to the sea could happen in their lifetime if they just agreed to come together. This is very alarming to me, and the fact that Beijing would be the place to broker that agreement ought to send shockwaves through our State Department, because it means the United States is losing its position on the international stage. This isn't the first one. I didn't think Iran and Saudi Arabia could come to an agreement. They did. Where did they do that? Beijing. Let's wake up to it because now, more than ever, we have to stand with Israel.